Good morning, sir. Could you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your name?
Yes, sir. My name is Caleb. It's C-A-L-E-B, and my last name is Sherman, S-H-E-R-M-A-N.
Thank you, sir. Where are you currently employed?
I am currently working over at Derrick Concrete
Where were you employed in January of 2023?
at the Office of Child Safety in Nashville, Tennessee.
Is that considered DCS or Department of
Yes,
Children's
sir.
Services? Okay. Could you just give the jury an overview of what DCS does?
So in my division, we worked abuse cases where somebody was in a caretaking role with a child.
How long were you with DCS?
Approximately 7 years.
And what roles did you have while you were at DCS?
I was an investigator when I started working local cases. Those cases were abuse allegations where the parents were the perpetrators. Then went to central office, did case assignment jurisdiction, and then I went to work in the special investigations unit.
Is that also called SIU?
Yes, sir.
And what kind of cases does SIU handle?
We predominantly work cases where anybody's in a caretaking role or in a professional role with a child and there's an allegation.
So the role is different if the allegations are against someone other than the parent. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What do you do differently? How do you handle that investigation differently, if any way?
We would still work them the same, it's just in a different capacity.
Okay. As far as DCS's ability to remove the child, obviously that's not an option if that's not the parent.
Yes, sir.
Is that what you mean?
Correct,
Okay.
yes, sir.
Okay, and yesterday, I'm sorry, let me backtrack. Just explain a little bit how a general investigation would work. What would you do on an investigation?
So typically, we would get a phone call, we would go through the child abuse hotline. From there, they use a measuring tool to decide if it meets criteria, it doesn't meet criteria. If it does not meet, it gets screened out and doesn't get picked up. If it does meet criteria, it would be assigned to me.
Okay. So yesterday during jury selection, we talked a little bit about the SIPIT process. Could you explain to the jury what that is?
Yes, sir. Typically when we get a case, if there is allegations that are, we call them severe, if there's extensive bruising, it could be a sex abuse case, anything that's considered severe abuse, we would utilize SIPIT.
And then who all is present for SIPIT?
It'd be the CAC, their attorneys, detectives, captains, they would assist us in the case.
Sherman, would you scoot up a little bit to that microphone?
Oh, yes, sir.
or
My apologies.
Well, that's all right.
And then at this SIPIT process, is a recommendation made as to how to handle the case or what to do with the case further?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How would a, speaking generically, how would an investigation with DCS that SIU handles, how would that be concluded? What would happen?
In this particular case,
Just, or in general, yeah.
so if we did get the case and there was concerns with severe abuse, we would notify SIPIT, and at that point, they would assign a law enforcement agency.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's get more specific then. Did you investigate the case in January of 2023 that involved Ms. Sarah Fuson and Olivia Hyde?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How did you receive notification that you were assigned that case? Do you know?
Through the child abuse hotline.
Okay. What did you do when you first got the case?
I notified our supervisor and then to make contact with the parents.
Okay. You spoke to the parents.
Yes, sir.
What did you do after that?
I also went out to the daycare to interview the director.
Did you speak to the parents in their home, if you recall?
Yes, sir.
Sorry. Did everything appear normal in the home?
Yes, sir. No concerns.
Okay. Then you went to the daycare, you said?
Yes, sir.
What did you do at the daycare?
I spoke with the director and also got pictures and a video.
Okay. We watched some video yesterday. What was the video that you saw?
It was with Ms. Fuson in the room with a child that was on a cot.
Okay. And what did you see on that video?
It looked like she,
Yeah, I'm just asking.
Hold on a second. You objecting? The objection is for him interpreting the video because the video speaks for itself. Any other basis upon which you would want to introduce?
I'll move on, Your
All
Honor.
right, I'll sustain the objection.
What did you do after viewing the video?
I notified my supervisor of what was on the video and the pictures, and that's when we determined we would need a law enforcement agency involved and notify SIPIT.
Okay. And then did you contact law enforcement or how did that work?
I sent an email to Detective Pendarvis.
Okay. And did you communicate with Detective Pendarvis?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then at that point, was your investigation pretty much concluded?
Yes, sir. Once law enforcement gets involved, we let them take the lead. When I did send that to Detective Pendarvis, he worked with law enforcement and there might be a conflict of interest, so they would have to get TBI involved.
Okay.
And that was the end of my part.
And does DCS make a classification as to how did you close this case out? What were the findings that DCS made?
The findings,
Turn your microphone on, please. It's not on, so.
Oh, I'm sorry, Judge.
That's all right.
Forgive me. It's a hearsay objection. Obviously, this testimony is based on the investigation of others.
He investigated the case, Your Honor. I'm asking him how he classified that he wrote the report. I'm asking him how he closed this case out.
Overrule the objection. He's basically testifying about what his investigation resulted in, so I overrule the objection.
How did you close this case out? What was your determination?
we substantiated.
What does that mean?
So with ours, we don't do the criminal side. So with a substantiation, it would keep her from working with children, daycare, or schools.
And then that would go into a database?
Yes, sir.
And you say her, you mean Mrs. Sarah Fuson?
Yes, sir.
If I could have one moment, please, Your Honor.
You may. All right. Mr. Strains, you would wish to cross-examine?
Just very briefly, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Sherman.
Morning, sir. How are you?
Good. Do you remember the date that you were brought into the case?
No, sir.
Okay. And you received, I think you told the jury, a call to the hotline at DHS?
DCS.
DCS?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you remember when you received the call?
No, sir.
And do you remember who called you?
No, sir.
Okay. Did there come a point in time early in the investigation that you heard that there was an allegation of a skull fracture?
Yes, sir.
And who did you hear that from?
I believe it was Dr. Lakin or our safety nurse, Thomas Spiller.
And how long were you investigating the case?
I don't recall unless I have my papers in front of me.
Did you appear before the Davidson County Grand Jury
No, sir.
and testify?
No, sir.
I should have said the Montgomery County Grand Jury.
No, sir.
You did not. And you had no role in selecting the charges that went into the indictment?
No, sir.
That's all.
Redirect. Thank you, sir. You may step down. You may have a seat in the courtroom, or you may leave if you'd like.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Holder, you may call your next witness. Around here, raise your right hand. Let the clerk place you under oath.
I do.
Good morning, sir. Could you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your name?
I'm Detective Alan Pendarvis, Allenpendorvis.
Thank you, sir. And where are you a detective?
I'm employed with the Clarksville Police Department.
How long have you been employed with the Clarksville Police Department?
A little more than 16 years, I believe.
And how long in your current role as a detective?
I've been with the Special Victims Unit for right at 10 years.
And what sort of cases does the Special Victims Unit investigate?
Variety of crimes, typically child abuse, child sex abuse cases with adults, human trafficking, child exploitation, things of the sort.
If you recall offhand, how many child abuse cases have you investigated?
I'd say a good average, some more than less, a year, maybe 1,000 in my 10 years that I've been there.
And you were working in this role in January of 2023, is that correct?
Yes, sir, I was.
Okay. Did you receive a call from DCS about a case involving Sarah Fuson and the victim Olivia Hyde?
Yes, sir. I'd initially received an email from Mr. Sherman.
Okay. And what did you do upon receiving that email?
He had sent me the email, had a very brief synopsis about what all he had done, and it included a few photographs and a couple videos from the child care center.
Okay.
So after reviewing those photos and videos, it was also described the relationship of the potential suspect with the sheriff with Montgomery County. So,
I'm sorry, when you say potential suspect, are you talking about Sarah Fuson?
yes, sir, I am.
Okay. And what do you mean by the relationship?
In that email, it had described that she was the daughter of the sheriff.
Okay. And what did you do as a result of learning that? Anything?
Yeah, after watching the videos, I went and consulted with my supervisor to talk about the possibilities of there being a conflict of interest in the case. She had then consulted with her chain of command, which ultimately ended up with a request at the district attorney's office to submit a request to TBI for them to investigate the case.
And why did you feel, I'm sorry if maybe you already explained this a little bit, but why did you feel the need after watching the video to go consult with your supervisor?
The videos were quite shocking at best. I've worked several of these, and after watching the videos, I was fairly confident that if we had worked the case ourselves, there was a good chance that charges would pursue after watching those videos.
If Miss Fuson was not the daughter of the sheriff, what would you have done differently?
Still would have worked the case and still would have pursued charges just based on that initial.
But you would have not gone to your supervisor?
I mean, I consult with my supervisor
Okay.
quite often so she's in the loop of what we're tracking as well.
So to avoid any potential conflict, you wanted to make sure we had a neutral third party?
Correct.
Okay. And did you just cease all your
Yes, sir.
investigation?
I believe I got that email from Mr. Sherman around 3 p.m. that afternoon. By the time that the word had made it up to our chain of command and the district attorney, I was advised at about 5:15 that a request had been made to TBI and not to do any additional tasks until we got 100% word from them that somebody was going to be taking the case over.
So you had the case for one day?
I had the case for a couple hours.
Couple hours.
Yes, sir, between 3 p.m. and about 5:30 p.m. Just about the only additional tasks that I did in that case during that time is after watching the videos, I did call Mr. Sherman to ask if the child had received a medical from any staff. He had informed me that the mom of the child was a nurse, but he had returned the phone call just shortly after my initial phone call with him and said that they had scheduled a meeting with Vanderbilt the following day.
Okay. So you did that out of an abundance of caution based upon what you saw in the video?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I have no further questions for this witness at this time, Your Honor.
Stranger, you wish to cross-examine?
Yes, Your Honor, just very briefly. Officer Pendarvis.
Good morning, sir.
I think you were brought into the case January the 18th of 2023, is that right?
You're correct, sir.
And it was a referral from Caleb Sherman, who worked for the Department of Children's Services, is that right?
That's right.
And you were in contact also with Jonathan McGowan at TBI, is that right?
The following day, yes, sir.
Okay. And it was Investigator Sherman with the Department of Children's Services that suggested to you that there had been a finding of a hairline skull fracture, is that right?
Yes, sir. He had called me the afternoon of the 18th the morning of the 19th. I told him the 18th that, hey, I'm probably not going to be working this. It sounds like TBI has been requested. So he had called me the morning of the 19th to give me news that Vanderbilt had potentially found a hairline fracture, and he was asking who the agent in charge that he needed to report this information to.
But you didn't see any written report
No, sir.
that corroborated that in any way, is that right?
That's correct.
And that's what motivated you to pick up the phone and contact the parents of Olivia Hyde, is that right?
I don't recall contacting any parents of Miss Hyde.
Aren't you the individual that suggested that Olivia should be brought to Monroe Carroll Hospital at Vanderbilt for?
I did suggest to Mr. Sherman to set up an appointment for her. Yes, sir.
Okay. And that was based on sort of this circular discussion of Sherman telling you that he had heard that there might be a skull fracture.
Me contacting him and asking for the medical?
No, you making the suggestion to Mr. and Mrs. Hyde that they have the child brought to Monroe Carroll.
I don't recall ever speaking to Mr. and Mrs. Hyde. I'm not saying I didn't, but I don't recall that.
Okay. Who is it that would have suggested that they go to Vanderbilt Hospital?
I suggested to Mr. Sherman after
Okay.
watching the videos that the child be checked out.
But you never saw any sort of a medical report, a CT scan, anything that conclusively stated that this child had suffered a skull fracture? did you?
No, sir. By the time Mr. Sherman called me and informed me of what he had been told, I told him I was no longer going to be working the case, that Agent McGowan had contacted me, and I gave him that contact information to provide that info to.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Redirect. Thank you, Detective. You may step down. You're free to go. Holder, you may call your next witness.
State calls Dr. Karen Lakin.
You'll raise your right hand, doctor.
In this case, be the truth, the whole truth.
Good morning, ma'am. Could you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your name?
Yes, I'm Karen Lakin, and it's Karenlakin.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm going to pass up. Can you tell the jury as I'm passing this up, what is your profession?
Your Honor, may we approach one moment?
You may. There's other experts that are going to testify. The rules allow experts, other experts, to also sit in on the testimony of one expert. Anyway, it's a rule that we allow. And one of those experts that's going to be testifying later in the case is going to be on Zoom, but they won't be shown, but they want to be able to listen to the testimony. And that way they can formulate opinions and so forth. So we're going to ask you to step across the way until that expert is in on our Zoom meeting, and then we'll go from there. Doctor, if you want to step down and have a seat in. You were, I think, about to talk
Yes, Your
about
Honor.
her CV.
Yes, Your Honor. Well, I'm going to start over if that's okay. Could you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes, I'm Karen Lakin, and it's Karenlakin.
Thank you. And could you please tell the jury what your profession is?
Yes, I am Associate Professor of Clinical Pediatrics at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. Actually, I'm supposed to say Monroe Carroll Jr. Children's Hospital at Vanderbilt. And I'm also the section head for the child maltreatment program and the medical director for what we call the care team, which is the consultative team at Vanderbilt whenever children come in with traumatic injuries.
Okay. How long have you been a pediatrician?
I've been a pediatrician now for 29 years.
29 years.
Yeah.
Do you specialize in a particular field of pediatrics?
Yes.
And what is that?
Child maltreatment. We actually call it child abuse pediatrics is the official terminology.
Okay. How long has this been your area of expertise?
I've actually practiced in the field for the past 24 years now, and first as a consultant, and then I developed the CARES team at LeBonner Children's Hospital in Memphis, Tennessee. So I became the medical director there in 2006.
Could you please describe your educational background?
Sure. My undergraduate degree is from Duke University, and I have a master's degree in public health from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And my medical degree is from East Carolina University in Greenville, North Carolina. My residency was at LeBonner Children's Hospital in Memphis and the University of Tennessee.
And could you please summarize any postgraduate work as a pediatrician prior to your current position?
I was a general pediatrician with the Raleigh Group in Memphis, Tennessee, for 3 years. And then I joined the faculty at the University of Tennessee as a general pediatrician in the Department of General Pediatrics. And then I started working in the field of child abuse pediatrics.
Have you previously been qualified as an expert in the field of child physical abuse?
Yes, I have.
Do you know how many times?
Over 100 times. Yeah.
How many counties, if you recall?
Most of West Tennessee, about half of Middle Tennessee, a few counties in East Tennessee, and then also in about 6 additional states.
And have you previously been qualified as an expert in Montgomery County, Tennessee?
I have.
How about Dixon County, Tennessee?
I believe I have also in Dixon, yes. Yes.
And as, Your Honor, at this time, I would offer Dr. Karen Lakin as an expert in the field of child abuse
Any
pediatrics.
questions?
All right, I just had a few questions.
All right. In qualifying an expert, both sides get to ask questions before the court makes a determination regarding the qualifications. Mr. Drines, you may question the witness.
Morning, Dr. Lakin.
Hi.
Your report that you prepared in this case indicates that you've been declared an expert in a number of states, is that right?
That's correct.
And one of those states is the state of Mississippi, is that correct?
That's correct.
And do you recall testifying in a case styled State v. Joshua Clark
I do.
back in 2018?
Yes.
And that would have been a case that involved an allegation of shaken baby syndrome.
That's
Is
correct.
that right? Back
Yes.
when that was really a big topic in child abuse, is that correct?
It's actually still a very prominent topic in child abuse.
And there was a conviction in that case, is that right?
Yes,
And it was based in large part on your testimony, is that correct?
that's correct.
And if you recall, the Mississippi Court of Appeals found that your testimony in that case was so unreliable as to be inadmissible.
That's not my understanding of the finding.
Now, it was later changed by the Mississippi Supreme Court. The Intermediate Appellate Court did find your testimony unreliable.
No, that wasn't, it was actually whether or not the judge, my understanding is whether or not the judge should have allowed my testimony. So I wouldn't say that that was the,
Well, that's what the Mississippi Supreme Court said.
yeah, right.
But what the Intermediate Appellate Court said was that your testimony was unreliable. Remember that?
And again, I'm not a lawyer or a judge, so my understanding is that all of that transpired through the courts, but ultimately it didn't change anything.
That would have been a pretty significant finding against your testimony.
If it had been upheld, it would have been, but it wasn't upheld.
That was made by the intermediate.
Correct, but it wasn't upheld, so
And it's only a few years ago.
that would be 7 years ago.
And you never read the opinion of
I read parts of it, but it's so much legal terminology and that it was,
you remember seeing the word unreliable.
I'm sure it was in there,
And you remember that the case was initially reversed.
but it was not upheld. It was then not upheld.
And I fully acknowledge that.
Yeah.
I'm just making the point that
I would not state that that's actually ultimately what that finding was. I don't agree.
oh, that's my question.
You may.
Your Honor, based on
Hold on, make sure that door is closed.
the ruling, and I've got a copy for the court if you need it, if the case is State v. Joshua Clark, it is a Mississippi case. The Intermediate Appellate Court in Mississippi reversed the conviction based on the unreliability of Dr. Lakin's testimony. The court has permitted me to conduct a voir dire of her here in open court in front of the jury. I think that finding by the Mississippi Intermediate Appellate Court casts some doubt on her qualifications to appear as an expert in this court. And I think it affects her credibility in the sense that the Intermediate Appellate Court found that her testimony to be so unreliable as to be inadmissible. Based on that, for the record, I'm asking that the court not declare her to be an expert in this case.
Holder, you wish to respond? Mr. Moore?
Briefly, obviously, as the court knows, an intermediate appellate opinion reversed by a Supreme Court is for nothing legally other than, obviously, you'd be entitled to say, isn't it true that intermediate court said such and such? Fine, he's done that, which I submit is more akin to a question to be asked on cross-examination, has nothing to do with her qualifications to be admitted as an expert. That would go, if anything, to the weight of her testimony, not to her credentials.
First of all, we are not in the state of Mississippi, and I don't credit the the Intermediate Court of Appeals in Mississippi's opinion as to whether or not, for two reasons. One, we ain't in Mississippi. Two, is the fact that we are not dealing with a shaken infant syndrome. I have had experience in that type of a case as a trial lawyer representing someone who was charged with that same type of an offense. So I'm well familiar with the shaken infant syndrome and the ever evolving diagnosis and treatment of those types of injuries. But I can tell you that because this is not a shaken infant syndrome case per se, or at least it's not to my knowledge, then we are not dealing with that particular thing. But I also agree with Mr. Moore that the questions that have been raised don't go to her qualifications as an expert witness. They might go to the weight to be given to her. And frankly, I probably should have had the jury step out before this voir dire of the expert witness occurred anyway. So I'm going to bring the jury back in, and I'm going to qualify this lady as an expert in the field of child abuse pediatrics. Is that the area of her expertise? Yes, sir. And I'll instruct the jury that they or to disregard any questions regarding her qualifications that were raised by some issue regarding the state of Mississippi, and that as far as this court is concerned in the state of Tennessee, she's qualified as an expert, that any evidence regarding those other issues could be considered by them as to the weight to be assigned to that testimony rather than her admissibility of her opinions.
Thank you.
All right. Bring the jury in. Ladies and gentlemen, in your absence, I considered an issue and an argument of counsel regarding the qualifications of this witness. As I instructed you in my initial instructions, it is my responsibility to apply the law that the state of Tennessee allows in this situation. This issue that was raised regarding the doctor's testimony in a case in Mississippi, in this court's opinion, do not affect her qualifications as an expert in the state of Tennessee. I have considered the argument, and I am ruling and ordering that this witness be considered to be an expert and qualified as an expert in the field of child abuse pediatrics for the state of Tennessee. The issue that was raised regarding her opinion in a different case outside of the state of Tennessee may, if it's raised again, may be considered by you as to the weight to be given her testimony and whether or not it is to be, how much weight to assign to her testimony. But it doesn't affect her qualifications as an expert in this field, and I am therefore instructing you that she is qualified as an expert in the field of child abuse pediatrics. Now, I don't know if the counsel will approach the bench, please. To the lawyers, trying to avoid you having to walk. I know you like the exercise you get from walking across the hallway, but I'm trying to avoid that as much as possible. So rather than trot you out across the hallway and then trot you back in, I showed this to the lawyers, and everybody agrees it's a permissible question to be asked, so I'm going to allow one of the lawyers to ask that question.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. The question was, how many times have you been called as a witness in other cases?
As an expert witness in other cases, all of it's, I don't count anymore. I've been doing this since essentially 2000, so the past 25 years. And I testify as an expert witness in juvenile court, probably, I'm now averaging about 20 a year. And then for criminal cases, I've probably testified as an expert witness maybe over 40 times now. For both, I've also reviewed cases for the defense, and I've done a handful for the defense, but the majority, because of my job, is I'm usually requested for assistance because of the patients that I see.
And if there were any other issues, like Mr. Strantz brought up, I'm sure he would have brought them up. Was that the only other issue regarding your testimony and all the times that you've testified that you're aware of?
Yes, and I mean, I've never not been allowed to testify as an expert.
I'm going to pass up something. Do you recognize that?
Yes,
And what is that?
this is my CV.
Okay. Just lists your work background, educational background, et cetera.
Yes,
Basically what you've already testified to.
yes.
Your Honor, I would offer that as the next number to exhibit.
What are we up to? 4, Exhibit 4.
All right, Dr. Lakin, in your years of experience, have you worked specifically with skull fractures before?
Yes.
Okay. Now, can you describe, in any child physical abuse case that you treat or review, can you describe the process of how you determine if abuse occurred?
Yes, so just like with any type of medical condition, you have to start out with a history. So a patient comes in and you take a history as to what has happened, what are the symptoms, just like you do for any medical condition. Because I'm a pediatrician, then I have to take history from the caregivers that present with the patient. I review any medical testing that's been done up to that point, and then I may also recommend additional testing. I may be talking to other doctors that have seen, because I'm a consultant, and they've already seen the first treating physician. So I may also discuss with them any type of concerns that they have or findings that they have as I'm going in as well to see the patient for myself. And then based on any tests that I review, also if there's radiological studies, I'm going to review all the radiological studies as well. In particular, because in my field, we always have a lot of radiological studies, then I will go and speak with the radiologist and review those films with the radiologist as well. Any other subspecialists that might be involved, neurosurgeons, orthopedic surgeons, infectious disease, just whoever else is involved. And then based on all of that information, then I'm going to develop my recommendations, my assessment recommendations.
Thank you. And then in your role as the head of the care team, could you just explain what it is the care team does exactly?
Yes, so we're a consultative service at the hospital. We are not the ones that see the children initially if they're coming in through the emergency department. So any children that come into the Vanderbilt Emergency Department that have any type of traumatic injuries that might be concerning for non-accidental trauma, but also we'll see children that have complex medical conditions where they might be presenting like with what we call failure to thrive. They don't grow well. We have a failure to thrive clinic. They will consult us to help assist if they want some additional input, because we also serve as the primary sort of liaison to communicate those medical findings to the outside agencies that might involve, such as Child Protective Services or law enforcement, because someone has to explain to them what the injuries are and everything. So that's our role. And then we do, our team has a clinic, and so children are sometimes referred to us by other pediatricians that have concerns. We may get children that are seen out in the field by Child Protective Services or law enforcement. They can refer children to us as well. And in that situation, we'll see them on an outpatient basis as the first provider that does the examination.
So when the care team gets a case, if I'm misstating this, please correct me, abuse has already been suspected by someone at that point. Is that accurate?
For the most part, except for those situations where we have the complex medical kids. So with complex medical kids, it's not necessarily that the question is coming up whether it's non-accidental trauma. It is because of their complex medical conditions that the families may need extra help, or not growing or things like that. So that's also a portion of our practice.
Okay. And even so, some of the cases that you review, your determination would be that it's the result of an accident and not abuse. Is that accurate?
Oh, of course, yes.
And what do you base that on?
Again, we look at whether the history is going to support the type of findings that we see, the medical findings that we see. If there are other additional injuries that we find, such as occult fractures, healing fractures, or other injuries that the presenting issue that came in was not remotely associated. So then the question is where are these injuries coming from that, we didn't get a history for?
If there's other evidence outside of a description of what occurred, such as video or something, would that be important to consider as well?
Yes.
Now, are you familiar with Olivia Hyde?
Yes.
And were you asked to consult or review that case?
Yes.
Okay. Could you please describe the process and assessment you made regarding how you evaluated that case?
Yes. So I actually was not called to see Olivia when she came to our emergency department because she was actually referred from, I believe, law enforcement to have another evaluation done because of the findings that were on a video that was provided to law enforcement by the daycare center. So she was originally seen by her primary care provider, who did a physical exam shortly after the incident. I think the incident occurred January the 9th, and then she was seen by the primary care provider on the 13th. And so at that time, some external injuries were noted and documented. And I believe they checked a blood count or hematocrit just to see what her hematocrit level was, red blood cell count. But there weren't any types of studies that were done to look for any internal injuries. And so after the detective had seen the video and saw the extent, then she went to the emergency department for further, more detailed studies, x-rays and CT scans. Our team was not consulted at that time when she came to Vanderbilt because it was the video was already known and reported, and so they did those studies and then reported back to the caseworker what the findings were. And it was only after that process then I was asked to review all of that. So my evaluation included reviewing the videotapes. There were 2 videotapes, looking at all of the medical records. And I actually reviewed all of Olivia's medical records because she was only 13 months old. And so I had all of her primary care records as well as her visits to the emergency department. And then I reviewed all of her lab work that was done at our hospital, the CT scan, the skeletal survey.
Thank you. And can you describe your assessment that you made about Olivia's injuries in this case?
Sure. So actually the first thing I was able to review were the records. And so in the emergency department records and the findings, as well as looking at the CT scan of the head and the skeletal survey, there were injuries noted on her CT scan of a area on her, just to the left of her sagittal suture, of a possible fracture. The area was described as a lucency that was suspicious for fracture. She also had a small abrasion scratch towards the inner surface of her left eye. And that was noted on her physical exam in the records. She did not have any skeletal fractures. And on her physical exam, and the visit to the emergency department was not done until the 19th, so that's 10 days after the incident. And she still had documented some fading bruising that were on both of her arms in the emergency department at that time.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm going to pass forward. We're going to flesh out more of what you just testified to, but I want to get, do you recognize that?
Yes.
What are those?
These are the medical records for Olivia.
Are those the medical records for her visit that you described on the 19th, I believe?
Correct, yes.
Your Honor, I would ask that those be admitted as the next numbered exhibit.
Right, next exhibit in order would be 5.
If you could keep those with her, please. I'm going to, what's their number? And your, Doctor, if I could direct your attention to page 46, bottom. Where it says findings, do you see that?
Yes.
Could you please read that?
Yes. No intracranial mass effect or midline shift, normal parenchymal attenuation, no evidence of intracranial hemorrhage or evolved infarct, no extraaxial fluid collection, normal size and configuration of the ventricles, linear lucency left of the sagittal suture, extending to the coronal suture, no overlying soft tissue or underlying intracranial abnormality, normal scalp soft tissues, opacification of the maxillary sinus, the mastoid air cells and middle ear spaces are clear, unremarkable orbital contents. The impression is no acute intracranial process. Number 2, thin linear lucency just to the left of the sagittal suture, extending to the coronal suture, suspicious for age indeterminate, though likely subacute to chronic fracture. No soft tissue swelling or intracranial abnormality is seen adjacent to this lesion.
Okay. Can you please explain that to normal people? What does that mean that
Yes.
you just read to us?
So again, the CT scan was performed to evaluate for any type of injury that you can't see externally on a child. We are always very concerned if there's a history of head trauma to make sure that there's no injury to the brain itself, intracranial hemorrhage, subdural hemorrhages, those things that we can see in abusive head trauma. There was an abnormal finding, which is this thin linear lucency that was described, that was extending from the coronal suture. The radiologist described this as suspicious for age indeterminate, though likely subacute chronic fracture. So there was an abnormal finding on the CT scan that was linear. It's described as linear, and when you see the fracture, you can tell it's very linear. It's not what we call the serpiginous or wavy. It is parallel to the sagittal suture. So in a baby's skull, you have 4 to 5 major sutures between the different bones of the skull. And this was to the left and parallel to the sagittal suture. The lucency was suspicious for fracture because fractures are linear on scans. They're not serpiginous.
Let me ask you to clarify that. The terminology that the radiologist used, suspicious for fracture,
Yes.
would he have seen the video at this point?
Oh, no.
Would that have helped him make his diagnosis of the CT scan?
Yes, so the radiologist will tell you all the time that the only thing that they have for interpretation is what is given to them when they're reading the films. And so that comes from the emergency department. And no one in the emergency department saw any video. They were just told that there was a video of a child being injured, and they needed to examine the child to see if there were any internal injuries. So the more information that can be provided, the better their interpretation is.
Thank you. And we've been talking a lot about sutures and skulls and whatnot. I'm going to pass you an item so we can let the jury understand what you're talking about a little more clearly.
Yes.
Could you please describe what those are and tell us if they were published or not?
Yes. Well, the most recent publication, I was involved in a research project at Le Bonheur with using artificial intelligence to detect retinal hemorrhages in infants with abusive head trauma. And that was published in JAMA, or the Journal of the American Medical Association. And then I was involved in a project involving witness cases of abusive head trauma, where we had children that came in with findings of abusive head trauma that were actually witnessed by the mechanism was witnessed by objective observers. And then I've written a chapter for an orthopedic textbook for residents and medical students, and also primary care providers that want some extra support. And the chapter that I wrote was specifically on fractures.
Okay. Doctor, did you prepare a report regarding Olivia's case?
I did.
I'm going to pass. Is that the report that you prepared?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would ask to admit that and offer that, and mark that as the next numbered exhibit.
8. Good. You wanting that demonstrated to the jury report?
No, just that they can take it back with them later during deliberations, Your Honor, that's fine. I believe everything in it we've already covered through Dr. Lakin's testimony. So, Doctor, just to wrap up here, is the bruising that we see on Olivia's arms consistent with child abuse?
Yes.
Okay. And that's based upon what?
The pattern of injury that's seen, and also the support in seeing the mechanism on the video.
And is the skull fracture that we saw and that Olivia sustained, is that consistent with child abuse
Yes.
based upon?
Also, the mechanism that was viewed on the video, as well as the characteristics of the injury that is seen on the CT scan.
And Dr. Lakin, as an expert in child abuse pediatrics, after reviewing all the evidence in this case, what are you able to say about the injury sustained by Miss Olivia Hyde?
The injuries that I reviewed, in my opinion, are consistent with non-accidental trauma or blunt force trauma.
If I could have one moment, please, Your Honor.
You may.
So, Doctor, let me just ask you this. Was this the only CT scan that was done on Miss Olivia Hyde that you're aware of?
Yes.
So why would they have not done a follow-up CT scan to determine if that was a fracture, if it had healed or not? Is there a reason they wouldn't have done another one?
Yeah, we don't follow up linear fractures. There's no treatment for them, and you're not going to expose children to additional radiation if there's no intervention involved.
So it might have helped us in our legal case, but it has no medical necessity for the child.
No. So all of our evaluations are directed towards medical treatment, not for court.
Thank you very much, Doctor. I have no further questions at this time.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, anybody, we've been going for a while before cross-examination. Anyone need a break? Right, Mr. Tryon, you're
Thank you.
free to cross-examine. Oh, sorry, did somebody raise a hand I didn't see? Got to be more aggressive. Throw something at me next time. All right, we'll take about let's take a 10-minute restroom break and then we'll come back.
Primary care provider, that would have been January the 13th, is that right?
That's correct.
And she was presented that day for some blood work and a physical exam.
Correct.
And you've had a chance to take a look at what the Vanderbilt Pediatric office in Hopkinsville, Kentucky concluded about that visit, is that right?
That's correct.
And that was just several days after the alleged event,
Correct.
correct? They reported that there were no changes in her eyes or pupils, correct?
Correct.
And that would have been significant to your sort of alternate diagnosis of this, perhaps there was a concussion or something like that.
You're not going to have changes in your eyes with the concussion.
They reported a painless range of motion in her extremities, correct?
Correct.
That she did not appear to be in any distress
Correct.
whatsoever. And that all of her lab results were normal.
Correct. They only took one lab test, and that was the hematocrit.
And they didn't note anywhere that there was any swelling of her head, is that right?
That's correct.
And they didn't note that there was any swelling, tenderness reported by the parents in her head.
Not in her head. The parents reported irritability since the incident.
In fact, there was no swelling of Olivia's head that was ever reported
Correct.
or detected in this case, is that right?
That's correct.
On January the 18th of 2023, that was the date that the police suggested that the Hydes bring Olivia to Vanderbilt. She was not sick, correct?
Correct.
She was not unconscious.
Correct.
She was not in pain.
I'm not aware of that, no.
Wouldn't you have expected signs of pain, evidence of crying in a child that had actually sustained a skull fracture?
Not 10 days after the event. And the other thing that I think is lost a lot of times is that we're talking about a 13-month-old who's non-communicative. And so children of that age, it's actually very common that we talk about the fact that we can't base our clinical findings on these children, which is why we do so many x-rays and we do CT scans, because they don't exhibit, they can't tell you that their head hurts, they can't tell you that they don't feel well. So their changes in demeanor are oftentimes missed because 13-month-olds get fussy and 13-month-olds cry, but they can't tell you why. And so I'm not surprised at all that there's no history of that, because a 13-month-old will cry intermittently. A 13-month-old, they get picky. So a lack of appetite, you don't even think twice about because they're 13 months old. The other issue is my specialty is child abuse pediatrics, and we do try to do a lot of education with other providers. So Olivia, having the history that she had in the report, obviously the primary care provider never saw the video. If the primary care provider had seen the video, I'm sure that she would have transferred her to an ER to be evaluated. But she didn't have any of that history. She didn't have that. But the reason why we're called is oftentimes because we tell a generalist, these are the things you have to do, because 13 months old, you can't base it on seeing if she's tender in her arms and legs. You don't know. So sometimes those things are, I don't want to say that they're missed, but if that's not her routine practice to examine the head, to palpate the head, especially if her hair is in a ponytail on the top of her head, she may miss it. I can't speak to that. I'm not going to say that she did. I'm just going to say what she has documented I can't speak to. But that's why we have my specialty.
And you talked about Olivia being nonverbal because of her age. For children that are nonverbal, doesn't that also complicate your sort of alternative suspicion that there might have been a concussion?
It So I'm basing my concern that there may have been a concussion on my experience with infants and toddlers and my observation of what happened. When you are trying to, again, you can't force an infant or a toddler to go to sleep. They have a very characteristic way of falling asleep. She was crying and trying to get up. She's pushed down onto the cot very hard, and then she goes still or limp and doesn't move again. That's not the characteristic of a 13-month-old falling asleep.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the CT scan that was done at Monroe Carroll Hospital at Vanderbilt on January the 19th, 2023. And the finding of the radiologist was that there was a linear lucency in the skull that was suspicious for fracture. Is that right?
That's correct. They're not going to report that.
Right, but I assume she would have been examined by someone before the CT scan. Is that right?
She was in the emergency department, and I believe they documented fading bruises.
Okay. In her arms, correct?
Correct.
But not in her head.
No.
And by this point in time on the 19th, we're 10 days removed from the incident. Is that right?
That's correct.
And Mr. and Mrs. Hyde did not report any bruising or tenderness to Olivia's head when they were bathing her over that 10-day period.
That's correct.
Do you know if anybody at Monroe Carroll palpated her head before they did the CT scan?
I do not.
Would that be something that you might have done to see if she was reactive to any sort of pain?
Probably.
Did you see anywhere in the records where the parents, Mr. and Mrs. Hyde, reported any sort of decreased appetite by Olivia?
No, the only symptom that I came across was increased irritability and increased crying after the event.
And without getting too graphic, no, the parents never reported any abnormal bowel movements, anything like that?
No.
Never reported any lethargy where she was sleepy or tired, anything like that?
I don't recall specifically. The note from the primary care provider is the one which was on the 13th, is the one that she was described as being, again, clingier and more irritable than usual.
But things like decreased appetite, abnormal bowel movements, lethargy, those are things that you might view as telltale signs of some sort of a head injury, correct?
So they are, and depending on how severe it is, it depends on how long it's going to last. So I don't recall what time the event occurred, but the family was not aware, no one was aware that anything had happened until the video was reviewed. So depending on what time, the timing of that video, which I want to say was probably around noontime, and then if mom didn't pick her up until the usual, after work around 4 or 5, we basically have 5 hours that are not accounted for. So I don't know what her symptoms were during that period of time. No one knows what the symptoms are during that period of time. So if she had lethargy or increased sleepiness, or if she vomited, or if she had a change in her bowel movements, no one knows, because there's about 4 hours that the parents weren't taking care of her, so they can't give a history what happened during that 4 hours.
One of your alternate diagnoses in this case is, I think you phrase it as probable concussion. Is that right?
That's correct.
You're not telling the jury that you're making a finding as an expert that this child had a concussion, are you?
I'm saying that what I see on the videotape makes me very suspicious that after her head struck the cot and she goes completely limp, that in my opinion, that would be highly suspicious for a concussion.
And you are suspicious of it, just like the radiology department was suspicious of that linear lucency, correct?
So I would hesitate giving a diagnosis even if I had physically examined her because she's an infant. But by seeing the video, I feel like the video would support that it's more likely that she did have a, so a definition of a concussion is a change in the neurological symptoms with no radiological evidence. So you've got basically your brain can't communicate because of the injury. And we don't have, like, with a intracranial hemorrhage where you see something on the CT scan, they wouldn't be diagnosed with a concussion, they'd be diagnosed with an intracranial hemorrhage because there's something abnormal on the CT scan. This child on video has, to me, a very distinct change in her neurological behavior once her head strikes the cot. And she stays asleep, which is lethargy
But as
or
you sit there
increased
right now,
sleepiness.
you don't know if she naturally fell asleep or has this probable concussion. Is
In
that
my
right?
opinion, it's not naturally falling asleep.
Okay.
So
But it's also, you're not able to tell the jury that it's a concussion either.
I am saying that I am very concerned that what I see in the video is representative of a concussion, yes.
So she's nonverbal, she can't tell her parents that she has a headache, which
No.
would be consistent with a concussion, correct?
She can't tell her parents anything, she's
Right.
only 13 months old.
That's my point.
Right,
And the point I'm making is none of the symptoms that are attendant to a concussion, nausea, vomiting, just basically not acting normal, are not part of this case, correct?
so those are not present in all concussions, and you can see that on Sunday afternoon when football players are taken out for concussion protocol. They're not on the, they don't have all of the symptoms. But the symptoms that she did have is she had an immediate change in her neurological status after she struck her head.
You're
And-
not saying that all of these symptoms are manifested immediately by someone who sustains a concussion?
They are more often going to happen temporally related to the incident, but yes, they can be delayed depending on the severity.
Don't you think it's significant that two young parents that are dealing with their child, who was their only child at that point in time, if she had any of these sorts of symptoms, they would have known? For example, not eating, incessant crying, irritability, falling asleep, arousing, and then falling back asleep. They would have notified somebody about those symptoms, correct?
So again, those symptoms are only as good as the interpretation by the caregiver, and if the
No,
child,
I'm not talking about an interpretation. I'm talking about the mere reporting by the parents of the symptoms, not any evaluation of the symptoms.
no, but I'm talking about the interpretation by the parents of the symptoms is very difficult in
There are no
infants.
symptoms is the point I'm making.
What I'm saying is there could be symptoms that are misinterpreted by the caregivers as normal behavior of a 13-month-old.
How would-
That is
how would the
why,
parent-
that
how
is
would the
why
parent-
concussions are so
Let her be
difficult.
talking and please let her finish her answer before we begin answering the next question. Our court reporter has to take down everything that's being said, so when you're both talking at the same time, it makes her job extremely difficult. So wait for her to finish her answer.
Judge,
before
the
we
problem is, very respectfully, she never wants to finish. And
Pardon?
She doesn't seem to want to finish. That's why I feel like I have to
Well,
try to interrupt her, and I apologize for that.
then you can object to her not being responsive to your question, but at this point, when you simply start talking over her, it is not productive for the court reporter or for the jury in my opinion.
The point that I'm making is, if she was not eating, the parents would have seen that.
And the point I'm trying to make is that in a 13-month-old, your definition or their definition of not eating is variable. So again, what can be interpreted as symptoms of concussion can also be interpreted as a 13-month-old.
The parents would have seen and reported incessant crying, is that right?
If it was incessant crying,
Right. And that would be a symptom of a concussion.
it can be, but it can also Be a symptom of a 13-month-old.
And incessant irritability, the same thing. They would have noted it and reported it.
They did report irritability.
Not incessant irritability,
What's your definition of incessant?
all the time.
Increased. She said increased.
Falling asleep, arousing, falling asleep again, never reported, correct?
Again, it's a 13-month-old.
Okay.
That's the problem that we all have. Physicians don't always make diagnoses in infants, which again is why we do so many scans, because we can't gauge that based on normal infant behavior.
You, in your testimony, you told us you prepared your report. I think it was it in February of
Yes.
25?
February 24th of 2025.
23, forgive me.
No, it was 2025.
Yes, 2025, forgive me. Today in court, here in open court for the first time, you said that there was perhaps abdominal bruising. Is that right?
I said when they were showing me the video of her being pushed up against the table that there were bruises on the arms, and there could have been bruising on the abdomen, but I don't know who examined her on that day, because she didn't go in for medical care until the 13th.
And you did your report after having the benefit of seeing the video, is that right?
Of course, yeah, that's included in all of the information I reviewed.
And you made no mention of the possibility of abdominal bruising, is that right?
Nobody documented abdominal bruising, no.
I guess, again, that's my point. You're just sort of saying things today that were never documented in your report.
No, I was asked about the bruising on her arms and if what I saw was consistent with what on the video, and could that support that? And I said yes. And there could have also been some on the abdomen, but there was not documented.
And the only point I'm making is in your written report that you did in February of 2025, you make no mention of the possibility of abdominal bruising. But it's something that you sprinkled into your testimony this morning, correct?
Correct.
Towards the end of your testimony, you talked about the wormian bone
Yes.
and your experience with your view of what a wormian bone should be and where it should be. Is that right?
Well, it's not just my view. The literature supports where the wormian bones typically occur.
Do you hold out the possibility that other experts in your field might have had different experience with wormian bones?
So I'm not talking about my experience with wormian bones, but I have to have a really good understanding of wormian bones, particularly because they're associated with osteogenesis imperfecta. So I've diagnosed quite a few children with osteogenesis imperfecta that had wormian bones on their scans. It's not my opinion about the location where wormian bones are reported. That's not an opinion. That's a fact. It's an opinion as to whether or not what is represented in the CT scan is a wormian bone, and the radiologist at Vanderbilt did not feel like it was a wormian bone. In my opinion, it's not a wormian bone. But I agree, there may be other experts that have a different opinion than I do.
And the radiologist at Vanderbilt said it was a linear lucency suspicious of fracture.
Correct.
I have one moment, Your Honor.
You may.
Those are my questions. Thank you.
Redirect by the state.
Briefly, Your Honor. I want to start, first off, with basically the last thing you said, because I don't remember exactly what you said. What was that?
Osteogenesis imperfecta.
Could you please explain to me and the jury and everyone else what that is?
Yeah, osteogenesis imperfecta is a genetic condition where there is a defect or a mutation in the genes that code for collagen. So that can cause bone problems. They kind of call it fragile bones.
And I think we talked, Mr. Stryance asked you a little bit about the medical report and noted there was no hemorrhaging or brain swelling. Can there be skull fractures without brain swelling and hemorrhaging?
Or soft tissue swelling, not brain swelling, but the soft tissue swelling.
Yes.
Yes, we had. So again, the problem goes into the timing of the examination and the examination itself. So it's just a fact that documentation may not be the greatest and the exams may not be as detailed, depending on who's examining the child. But certainly when you have swelling that's associated with a fracture, it can dissipate very quickly in just a few days. It depends on the amount of injury that's there. Yeah.
And I feel like we've kind of danced around this both on my direct questioning and Mr. Stryance's cross. In your opinion, was Olivia knocked unconscious by that final slam?
In my opinion, yes.
And lastly, have you received any extra pay for today, or is this part of your normal job?
No. None.
This is part of your job?
Yes, it is.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Mr. Dryans, any questions? Thank you, doctor. You may step down. Are you retaining the doctor as a witness for possible recall? Okay. Doctor, you just check with the district attorney's office about how to get in touch with you. All right. State having your next witness?
HANMCGOWEN,
By whom are you employed?
the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation,
How long have you been with the TBI?
for 6 years now.
All right. And how long have you been in law enforcement altogether?
I think this is my 13th year.
All right. And where were you before you were at the TBI?
Prior to being at the TBI, I was a detective with the Metro Nashville Police Department, where I served there for, I believe, a total of 7.5 years.
Okay. Which is where we would have first met,
Correct, correct.
And pursuant to your duties with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, were you assigned as the case agent or lead agent in the incident that we've been here these last 2 days or day and a half?
I was.
And do you recall when you were assigned this case?
It would have been January the 19th is when, on that day, my supervisor called me and asked me to lead this investigation.
Okay. And of course, heard having the right to be in the courtroom, you heard from Detective Naris and other gentlemen about how that came about.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
What they said?
Yes.
And when you were assigned the case and the TBI took it over, did you gather the evidence in the case, the video, anything that we've seen here today? Was that part of your case file?
Yes, as part of conducting an independent investigation, I took the materials that was gathered from the DCS caseworker and the detective. Those were added into my case file, but I also conducted my own investigation.
Okay. And by that, your own investigation, that involved like speaking to Mr. and Mrs. Hyde
Correct.
and obtaining, as I said, the video evidence?
Yes, I obtained the video as well.
Did you also perhaps obtain medical records and any other documents that might be consistent with your investigation?
Yes, as part of my investigation, I collected records from the daycare center, multiple medical facilities. I wanted to make sure we had all the evidence that would be necessary.
And did that include what turned out to be, I believe, Exhibit 1, that day bed or child bed? Exhibit 2.
Yes, I did. I collected the blue sleeping cot from the daycare center.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask is, did you have to go out and buy that, or was that one that was at the daycare?
No, I made contact with the daycare center director and asked to have select one of the cots so that the jury could see that today.
Okay. And was this just like any of the other cots in the toddler room?
Correct.
Okay. And I take it you're the one that packaged it up and
I was.
preserved it and brought it to court. Is that right?
That's correct.
Back in just a moment, Your Honor.
You may.
My question.
Brian, do you have any question?
Yes, Your Honor, just one moment. Collecting evidence at the Tylertown Daycare Center, correct?
Correct.
Do you remember an incident where there was a letter that was written by Sarah Fuson?
Ladies and gentlemen, step across the way, please.
Lodge my objection, which is we had a discussion about anything, statement, or anything from the defendant that's not admissible as a state unless it is admitted by the party opponent, and a letter would be hearsay, first of all, and inadmissible unless admitted by the state. I object.
It does seem to me, Mr. Strines, that this is pretty much what we were talking about in our out of the jury hearing conference. What is exactly is that you're asking him, and what exactly are you trying to introduce?
Judge, I have no intent to introduce anything. I just want to ask him, did he retrieve a letter that Sarah had written from the dumpster at Tylertown Learning Center, where Ms. Carter had obviously thrown the letter away? Not getting into the content of the letter. I'm just asking what he
What
did.
relevance does it have if the content of the letter is not being admitted? How does it make anything about this case more true or less true, which is what the relevant standard is? So how would the fact that he retrieved the letter have anything to do with it?
Just thought it was significant that she received a letter of apologizing for the whole,
This is a letter written by your client?
by my client, not apologizing for any of her conduct, but apologizing that, the Learning Center had to go through all of this.
Well, but again, that seems to me to be directly on point with what Mr. Moore is saying, is that the only reason the letter would be significant or be relevant is that it contains some sort of an apology by your client. And that is the direct objection that the state has, not speaking for the state, but I think that what I'm understanding is that their objection is that if you bring in the fact that there was a letter that was written by your client to the Taylortown to the daycare, then the only relevance it would have would be to introduce what was in the letter. And otherwise, it's not relevant.
I thought it was significant that she threw it away and that he retrieved it from the
I
dumpster.
sustain the objection because I think it does fit within the exclusion of any sort of statement by a defendant that's being introduced by someone that was not introduced by the party opponent. So I think the rule would exclude it. So we'll bring the jury back. And I'm just going to simply tell them that I'm sustaining the state's objection to the question. Mr. Moore, Mr. Holder, do you have other witnesses we're going to be introducing?
No, Your Honor, this would be the,
When we conclude this, okay. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, in your absence, I sustained the state's objection to the last question that was answered. I would remind you, according to my instructions and everything else, that if I sustain an objection, I'm doing it basically on legal basis. It doesn't have anything to do with, I don't have an opinion one way or the other about the guilt or innocence, and you should not infer from my ruling that I hold any opinion. I'm simply applying what I believe the correct interpretation of the law is. So I sustain the state's objection, and that question will not be allowed. Mr. Strines, do you have any other
I
questions?
just had one other very brief.
All right.
Asked about certain items that you seized is probably too strong of a word from Tylertown, and one of those items was the cot that's behind the circuit court clerk right now. And he doesn't need to see it. I just had some questions for him. In one of your reports, it's investigative report number 8, you give the dimensions of that cot. Is that right?
Yes,
And just very briefly, you described it as 4 3/4 inches tall, correct? You need to look at this to refresh your recollection.
if I could.
May I approach
You may.
Special Agent Gallo? And for the record, what is it that you're using to refresh your recollection?
This is a TBI investigative report number 8, which is the crime scene investigation report.
And if you would read that paragraph that deals with the cot to yourself, and then tell us if that refreshes your recollection.
Yes,
Thank you. So the height of the cot, and that's my word, is 4 3/4 inches.
correct.
So almost 5 inches off of the ground, is that right?
That's how I measured it at the
Right.
time.
And then the other dimensions are not as important to me, but this is about 5 inches off the ground, correct?
Correct.
Those are my questions.
Redirect.
No, Your Honor.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll step back across the hallway for a moment, please. The reason I know you said that was your last witness and before he was excused from the stand, and I wanted to address one issue. I've been handed another question by the jury. This one is, did the skull fracture show any signs of healing? I don't know that this witness can give any opinion about that, and obviously the doctor, like Dr. Lakin, can come back to the stand if you choose to do so, but I am of the opinion that it was not submitted to me while the appropriate witness was on the stand. So I'm telling you what the question was. Before you close your proof, leave it up to you whether or not you wish to recall any witnesses.
So this witness,
And I'm going to tell them that. So when it comes back, I'm going to tell them that this witness would not be able to render that type of an opinion.
this judge was, of course, remission, no objection. Attempt to answer the question.
All right, then we're going to, go ahead.
Can I be heard on that?
Yes, you may.
I mean, her opinion basically is repeating what the radiologist at Vanderbilt said, which is there's a suspicion of a fracture. So I don't know how she could ever be qualified at this point to say it was healing, because the fact of the fracture is very much in doubt, at least in my view of the case.
I think that again would go to the weight to be assigned to her opinion rather than the admissibility of it. She's been qualified as an expert, and you know, my opinion is that she can testify about whether or not, based on her observation of the CT scan of what she's shown us today, whether that she observed any signs of healing. So,
Judge, you have tried many, many cases as a lawyer and presided over many, many as a judge. If we get into testimony about something healing, then it's a fait accompli that there was a fracture. If we're going to get to the end of the discussion about healing, that's going to cement in the jury's mind, well, I guess everybody agrees there was a fracture. I think she's going to say whatever she wants to say, and
Agent McGowan, step down. Outside the presence of the jury, I'm going to allow the state to recall Dr. Lakin. We'll let him ask that question outside the presence of the jury, obtain her response, and then you can, you know, hear what her response is, and I'll renew your objection. I'll consider your objection again at that point. We're doing it outside the presence of the jury to allow us to determine whether or not her answer would be admissible or not. So,
Judge, I think it's a wonderful thing that the court does, permitting jurors to ask questions and trying to accommodate.
It is sometimes, and sometimes it isn't. So.
And this is one of those times it isn't, because it's as plain as the nose on my face. If we start talking about healing, then the jury's going to say, more than just one juror at that point is going to say, well, gee, we're beyond whether this was really a fracture, really an injury. We're talking about healing now. And it has the imprimatur of the court now by asking the question.
I'm going to allow the state to call her as a witness outside the presence of the jury. I understand your objection. I'm going to hear what she has to say, and then I'll make a determination whether or not to allow it. Your objection's noted on here as to whether or not this procedure should even be allowed. But at this point, the jury is not going to hear anything until I have heard what the doctor says and consider how it's going to be presented in such a way as to perhaps satisfy your objections to it as well as satisfy the jury's inquiry.
Yes, sir.
All right. Dr. Lakin, if you'll come back.
Your Honor, if I could please see the question so I can ask it exactly as it's written.
Yeah, let's do it. Now, keep in mind that Mr. Strines is, his objection is to the fact that that question presupposes the fact that there was a skull fracture, and I think that is the issue that he's objecting to. Asking the question seems to put the court's approval on the fact that there was or was not, even though the jury is clearly instructed that this question would be answered, would be asked, rather, only because somebody on the jury is asking it. But the question that is being asked needs to be, and I've advised them in my initial instructions that I may alter the question or the form of the question, so I'm instructing you, you need to ask this question in such a way that it does not automatically assume there was a skull fracture.
Yes, Your Honor, you answered my question for me. Dr. Lakin, in the medical report, the radiologist on number 2, he says, suspicious for age indeterminate, though likely subacute to chronic fracture. In this terminology, does it mention anything about, does it show anything, or do fractures show signs of healing in any way? Could you explain that?
Yes. So skull fractures are very difficult to age because they don't show the classic signs of healing that we typically see with long bones. One of the reasons why he actually, or in my experience, radiologists actually use the term suspicious because they use the presence of soft tissue swelling to help with timing, which obviously that's the conversation we've been having all day about not lack of soft tissue swelling. So I think the best way for me to answer this is that the radiologist reported that if there is a skull fracture, it is age indeterminate because we can't date, we can't give a hard date on fractures. They eventually do show some calcification, which then they would say, you know, is healing, but
So did this linear lucency that we're talking about and that we saw on the scan, did that show any signs of healing?
not from the 3D reconstruction, but we don't always see it on 3D reconstruction, so.
Thank you.
Mr. Strines, you wish to ask any questions?
No, Your Honor.
I'm concerned that by allowing the question and allowing Dr. Lakin to come back to the stand and testify, that it doesn't seem to me, if I understand correctly, your opinion is that you can't really say whether there's any healing because basically you're looking at what the CT scan operator said on the thing.
Correct.
And you're relying on that.
And
I think it's inconclusive enough that I should exclude this question being asked in front of the jury. Mr. Strans, all right. I just wanted to do this on the record so I could find out for sure what the right answer is. And now that I have what I think is the correct answer, I'm going to instruct the jury that when the jury comes back, we're going to have Agent McGowan come back to the stand. So he's seated there as he was when they left. And then if you'll just step down, then I'm just going to tell him that I've considered the question that was asked. I'm not going to repeat that question to the jury because it's only one individual juror, but that I find that this witness is not the correct person to have answered that question and that they can only consider what the proof has been offered. So. All right, bring the jury in. All right, everybody's claimed their seats again. Ladies and gentlemen, the reason I sent you out was that I was handed another question by one of you, and I have considered that question on the record with the attorneys. And the question that was asked is not a question that this witness can answer, and that the proof that's been offered up to this point would contain the information that would answer that question likely. And so for that reason, I'm not going to allow that question to be asked of this witness. So you have any other questions for Agent McGowan? Any other questions for Agent McGowan?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
And Agent, you may step down. Thank you.